Whether editing the home page of your site or a new page that you created in the Site Pages library, it's now time to add and edit a web part. Here are the general steps it takes to add and edit any web part throughout your site. First, of course, you have Add, and this is the easiest one, where you put your cursor in a section of the wiki page library and you say Add a web part or Add an app part. You get a panel where you can select the specific item that you want to, and you press Add, and that web part will be directly added to the page. I highly recommend that after you add a web part, you go back into the ribbon and do Save and Keep Editing. Next, you select a specific web part that you want to edit. There is a little drop-down arrow, that little triangle, that you click on and you select Edit Web Part. Once you do that, you get the Edit panel. This Edit panel is broken into several different sections that allows you to control the behavior of the web part. Finally, there's an additional setting that you can actually connect web parts to one another on a page. Those are the generic steps that you can take to edit a web part. Let's talk a little more in detail about the editing panel. First of all, on the top part of the editing panel is Views. And here, these are the views that exist in the list or library. But don't worry, you can create a specific view for the page if you don't want to show all of the columns and attributes that are in the view stored within that library or list. Note that if you do edit that view on the page, it is stored within the page. And if you ever change a column in the library, you'll also have to change it on that page again. So it's just something to consider if you're changing from the views that exist within the document library. A majority of the space in the editing panel is taken up by the web part properties. And these include appearance, which is the ability to control the height or width, or even if you're determining if the title should show or if there should be a border around that web part. Now this is called Chrome, and you have the choice to decide whether you use the default setting, showing the title, or showing none of the Chrome. Next is the layout, and really probably not going to use this one that often, and in it one of the most used features I have is Hidden, and even this one is used rarely when you're using a content editor with some custom coding that's affecting how the page works. Finally is Advanced. What's interesting about this naming is, well, it's not really advanced. It's controlling the behaviors of the web part. It's saying things like if it can be moved or if you can connect other web parts to it. Also in this section is the title of the URL. A great thing to train your users on is that every title brings them back directly to the list of the web part. However, if you want to change that functionality, you can by changing the URL within the Advanced section. Let's take a look. Let's take a quick look on the home page here of how to add a web part. First, you have to edit the page itself. And in a wiki page, you can select any area, whether it's in the top, left, right, or however you've designed your page. And in a web part page, you'd press on the Add Web Part Here button. Then you go into Insert, and you can choose an app web part if you know that you just want to do a list or a library, or you can choose web part if you want to look through all the different functionality. If you remember here, all the different functionality in web parts will show up on the left-hand side. For this simple example, I'll just pick the Documents web part to show. It's that easy. Now the document library shows up right on the page. What I highly recommend is to then go up and say save and keep editing to make sure that your web part is saved within the page. And then you can go and use the editing panel to configure it. You'll notice that the document library here is showing the all items view, and if there were documents, it would show them immediately, probably only showing the first 5 or so. Then you go into the editing panel, which we'll show you next. Notice again that SharePoint is very consistent, and you do this for any type of web part that you could imagine. Now that we've added the document web part to the home page, let's edit the web part itself and see what controls we have within the editing panel. For this, I'm going to hide the navigation. And I'm going to go in, do the drop down, and say Edit Web Part. Just so you know, Minimize will reduce the web part just to its header. I don't really find that this is that useful, and you'll see that in the web part properties you can actually remove this choice. So you can either remove it or probably just don't use it that often. Now we have the Web Properties editing panel, which will look almost exactly the same for all of your different web parts. There'll be little differences, and we'll go and show that in a second. But first, let's review what we have for the documents themselves. You can see on the top that we have the different views that are available. And notice that even though it's a library, it says List Views. Use your imagination. Here, the document library only has the choice of all documents or a summary view. We didn't create any custom views, so we'll just leave it like that. Here, toolbar type, you're able to have the full drag and drop toolbar, a briefer summary toolbar, no toolbar at all. So this gives you flexibility of sort of how you interact with the web part on the page. We'll put it at no toolbar. Under Appearance, you see you can change the title, so maybe I'll put Training Documents. And this title is only going to change how the web part shows up on the page and not actually change the title of the library itself. You can do height and width, but when using wiki pages, this might not fully work exactly how you expect. Say I tried to shrink the width to half the page here, SharePoint would still leave the other half white and it wouldn't fully shrink the web part. So play with it, but it's not as simple or straightforward as you might see. Here again you can see Chrome State. You could automatically open a web part in the minimized format, just showing the header. Not very useful, but something that I use all the time is the Chrome type. So default is actually a site collection setting, and in SharePoint 2013 that's really just showing the title only, but you could set it for title and border or another custom web part default that you might have. You could show none, and this would hide everything except the content in the list, or maybe border only, which will show the line around the web part but not the title. I'll just pick title and border to show you a little bit of what that looks like. Under layout, there's not that much that you'll commonly use. You could choose in some cases to move zones by using this control, but it's turned off in a lot of times. What I have used is hidden before. If you're using a content editor web part that has some custom JavaScript or HTML in it, you put it on the page so you can control some look and feel or some functionality, and then you hide it so that only you can see it when you edit the page. Taking a look at advanced, this really isn't that advanced. It's some common controls, being able to allow to minimize. I'll unclick that. Allowing connections, yeah, we'd like that. And allowing to edit in personal view. You can uncheck this. I don't find that many people actually edit the page and show their own personal view. Also, a really great thing is that you can change the title to link directly to maybe a specific view within the library, maybe even a page that you'd like to guide users to, and not directly to the list item that it automatically defaults for. You can add another description of that URL and provide directions to a help URL. This is really great if you record some trainings, like the one you're watching right now, that's specifically about document libraries. You could use the URL and skip right there if someone needs help about document libraries. Some really advanced settings are Ajax options and miscellaneous. Those don't come into play that often. Alright, we've made some setting changes, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say apply, which will keep the editing panel open and let me view the changes. Alright, so you can see that's a little bit different. There is a border around the web part. There is no dragging and dropping. And what I'll do here is if I've made changes to a web part, I'll always go save and keep editing so that I don't lose any of my functionality. Quickly showing why I did that is if I did have different columns I wanted to show, I can create a custom view directly within the page by clicking here on Edit the Current View. Here you can see exactly the same interface you get when you're editing a view within a list or a library. For this simple demonstration, let's check in a few extra ones. There we go, just for the fun of it, and I'll press OK. Now you'll notice an interesting thing, that because I did that, I come all the way back to the checked in page, and that's why I saved my changes before I went in and edited the view that is stored on the page. So please remember that, that's critical. Okay, let me take a moment and show you the addition of 2 more web parts just to show you that the editing panel can be a little bit different. Here I want to take the time and show you adding a links list, because the links in an announcement list do something funny in SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013. And when I say that, what they do is they don't default to the pretty summary view that you'd like them to have. So as I quickly went through, I just added the web part to the page. I edit the web part. The editing panel comes up as usual, but for a links list, what I really want to see the summary view. And again, I'll hit apply. Scrolling back down, oh, weird. It's not showing anything at all. This is another behavior that I can't fully explain. But before I do that, let me save and keep editing. And now what I want to do is also add the promoted links into here. So now notice that I added a new web part, but if I come up to the editing panel, I'm still actually on the original one. You have to come in and physically say edit web part for that editing panel to change. Now the promoted links is almost exactly the same as all of the other ones. And you'll notice too that when the page refreshed, you can see that the links are showing up in the view that I really wanted them to. Let me show you one other web part that has a different editing panel. We're going to use actual functionality and not an app web part. And we're going to go to Media and Content and show the Picture Library slideshow. Alright, so again we have to choose Edit the Web Part. And here what you'll see is a lot of different choices. So because it's a special functionality of a picture library slideshow, it asks how many seconds you'd like to show the picture, what library you'd like to choose from, what view of that library you'd like to choose from, an order, different display options, if you want to show or hide the toolbar. So if you notice, it's the same type of content. It's talking about the view, but it's customized specifically for this special web part. Also, you notice it doesn't have miscellaneous. Now what I'll do, because I want to come out and see the whole page together, is I want to say OK. Now the editing panel is closed, but I'm still actually editing. Another funny thing about this picture library is be careful of the sizes of the image. It will automatically size to the biggest image, as you can see here. Let me press the save button because I'm really happy with what I've done to the home page. Now you can see the training documents view with the border around it, the picture slideshow beneath it, the links library, and the promoted library. I like using the promoted library because it's a pretty neat 2013 feature. And there you have it. It's as simple as that to add and edit web parts on the page. Let's put the creation and editing of pages and web parts to practical use. On my site, I know that I'd like to have a single location or page for my team to go and view all meeting information. What I'm also going to do on this page is connect different web parts to create filtering. Let's go create the page. I'm not very original with my names. This is a great place to use the hiding of the navigation or full view in SharePoint 2013. I'll also change the layout. Add a title to the page. Format. Alright, great. Now I know I want to see the agenda in minutes, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the meeting notes list that I created. Okay, that meeting notes will show me the agenda. Now let's add it again. And we'll use that one for the minutes. I also know that I want to see all the tasks associated with the meetings. And finally, for filtering, because there aren't that many meetings that we're going to have as a team, I'm going to use the date filter. Just to be cautious here, I'll always go save and keep editing to keep all of the things I've done to the page. Now, let's start editing the web parts. I know this top meeting notes should be an agenda. Let's edit it. Here, I'd already created an agenda view. Why don't I mark the no toolbar? And I also want to change the name to agenda. I think that's right, so I'll say apply because I know that I want to edit more web parts on the page. Now you can see that I'm only seeing the current agenda of the meetings we're going to have. Next, let's move this to meeting notes. what I meant to say was let's change this to minutes. We'll again change the title. And that's good. Let's take a look. Okay, that works pretty well. I don't really like how the minutes look, so let me edit the actual current view that's on the page. But before I do that, I'll save and keep editing. Now I'm still editing the minutes. You can see up here it says minutes. And now what I want to do is edit the current view. And what I'm thinking of doing is changing the style. And this is a style that I use a lot. It's called newsletter. And if you have long text, what it does is it'll put that long text underneath the rest of the columns. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so you can see the agenda and all of the columns are going across the top. And the minutes, we still have the same columns, except that meeting column is below it. Yeah, I kind of like how that works. Okay, great. Well, one last thing, I want to edit the task list. But you notice also that I went back to the full page view. So notice after you edit the view of a web part, you're going to go back to the page view. And again, that's why a lot of the times I'll say save and keep editing in case you forgot to do your saves in order. You would lose some of your changes after you edit the view of another web part. Let's go edit. Let's edit the task list. And what I want to do here is I don't want to show the timeline. I don't want a toolbar. We'll keep the name the same, but I'll first apply those changes before I go in and change the task list itself, because I want those changes to be in effect. So what I do want to do is I want to filter the items that were only assigned on a meeting, and I want to group them by that meeting. So let's filter where meeting is not equal to null, and then let's group by the meeting, and we'll keep it collapsed. So here we go. Now we have a page that has my agendas, my minutes, and it also shows me the tasks, so I can open and close and see which tasks were assigned and are still open from what meeting. Now the final step is to connect the web parts. What we're going to be doing is connecting the date filter to the agenda and minutes. I usually like to start from the destination. We have to edit the web part. Edit connections, get filter value from, and of course, date filter. And here, I know that I want to connect it to a metadata column I created called meeting. Again, I'm not very original. Okay, with that done, you can see it says sending values to minutes. And let's do the same thing here. Get filter values from, date filter. All right, now sending values to minutes and agenda. Let's press save and see what happens. Now I'll type in a date for my first meeting, and you'll see that there is no agenda, but there are minutes. I'll type the date in and press return for my second meeting. and you'll see it switches, and now there are no minutes, but there is an agenda. You could do this filtering with a calendar. You could do this with multiple lists. It's a really great feature that enables you to have an organized set of information on a page, and then you filter it how your users might want to see it. So there you go, a demonstration of how to create a useful page for your team by creating a page, adding and editing web parts, and connecting those web parts.